Hello, my name is Callie Hefner, and I'm the Executive Director of FiXiT, a nonprofit dedicated to ending companion animal overpopulation by creating marketing incentive-based strategies to give all pet owners the desire and ability to get their animals spayed and neutered. In this webinar, I'm going to introduce you to our Final Fix project from which we based the SMART program. FiXiT conducted a 4-year-long case study on the Caribbean island of St. Croix, a project we called the Final Fix. During that time, we tested our marketing incentive-based strategies on the island of 50,000 people in the U.S. Virgin Islands. St. Croix is an island paradise with beautiful beaches, clear blue water, and interesting wildlife. What isn't so obvious are the challenges that animals face on the island. Many are homeless, literally living on the streets. Others live with rifle and chain used to guard people's property. And then, of course, many arrive at the one animal shelter on the island with little hope of finding for what would be their first home. There is an extreme level of overpopulation because the pet owners do not have the motivation to spay and neuter their dogs and cats. With this and other considerations in mind, we felt that this was the ideal spot to test our marketing methodology so that we could pass along the lessons that we learned to you. St. Croix is a relatively small island, only 82 square miles, but provides a closed population where animals are not migrating in and out, in which we could determine what needs to be done to solve the problem of animal overpopulation. It is a U.S. territory, providing us with a similar demographic to the general target group on the U.S. mainland. Therefore, we launched the Final Fix project on St. Croix in order to test marketing messages and incentives in a controlled environment that closely matches the target audience currently not participating in low-cost programs everywhere. Many people have asked us, why St. Croix? There are many factors that make this an ideal location. It is a U.S. territory, which we thought would give us a leg up on applying for grant funding when compared to international islands. We wanted to see an impact in a relatively short amount of time, so the population and size of the island couldn't be too big, such as Puerto Rico with 3.5 million people. At 50,000, St. Croix was just right. There were few media channels, so we could reach a lot of people by advertising in the few media channels that were on the island. And compared to the findings of other animal welfare organizations, St. Croix fit well with the key demographic variables such as household income and educational attainment. As I mentioned, there is a serious animal overpopulation problem on St. Croix that needed to be addressed, with a euthanasia rate that was multiple times the national average per capita. Before we came on island, there had been a low-cost voucher program in place for a decade that just wasn't reaching very many people, only 3 to 5 per week, or making an impact on the animal problem. The voucher program, provided as a service of the animal shelter, allowed for a low-cost option for spay and neuter at any vet clinic on the island. Therefore, the veterinary community was very supportive of low-cost service, an issue we had run into with other prospective islands. Another big factor was that the one animal shelter on the island was happy to cooperate with us. This graph represents the fate of animals coming into the St. Croix Animal Shelter over just 1 year. As you can see, most dogs and cats were euthanized and relatively few were adopted, transferred, or returned to their previous owners. With this level of imbalance, the promise of increasing adoption would not make a big enough impact. The populations of animals needed to be reduced. So we set the mission of the Final Fix project to end pet overpopulation by increasing interest in and access to spay and neuter programs. To start, we identified our target pet owners contributing the most to the problem with the help from the St. Croix Animal Shelter. This included distinguishing focal geographic areas and also identifying what socioeconomic, cultural factors, and common attitude towards animal care and spay and neuter unite those areas. The shelter gave us key strategic information for tracking the areas on the island from where the most animals were being surrendered or found as strays. They also provided us intake and euthanasia rates, providing us with a baseline standard from which we could compare the impact of our program. We ultimately considered the entire island as a target and provided our service to all residents, but we first needed to know some key information about this community before we could create a system that would increase demand for spay and neuter. Therefore, we began our study by conducting a spay-neuter perception survey. We asked over 2% of the island if they cared for dogs and cats and if they had spayed or neutered their animals. We determined that 38% of households were caring for animals, but few were getting fixed. Only 30% of owners had fixed their dogs, an amazingly low number compared to the 83% in the U.S. Of these people that had not spayed or neutered their animal, we asked a series of questions that would inform us of what key issues that prevented them from getting their animals fixed and what we could do to change that behavior. For example, when we asked those that had not heard of the decade-old low-cost voucher program, "Are you interested in using the existing low-cost spay-neuter options?" only 30% of people said they were. From this survey, we also learned that while people cited a variety of reasons for not spaying and neutering their animals, a few key issues emerged that we felt we could use to our advantage. For example, expenses and motivation were top reasons and ones that we thought would be solvable with the right marketing and incentives. With this insight into our community from our survey and by forming a local advisory committee made up of our target community members, we created a list of messages that we thought would be effective at motivating people to spay and neuter their animals. We used this list to narrow in on a short list of potential messages that we created advertisements to test in focal groups and surveys. We asked people who had not spayed and neutered their animals what messages they thought were most compelling. With testing, we were able to narrow our focus to 5 ads to use in our initial marketing campaign. Among our 5 chosen ads, we included a message of public safety, 300 children are attacked by roaming stray dogs, and a need to reduce the euthanasia in the shelter, with the ad thinking there are always homes for puppies. We focused on a personal family issue and included, "Do you know what happened to your puppy's puppies?" and also a cultural preference for the appearance of female dogs with, "Do you want your girl to end up like this?" And then last, overpopulation kills 4 out of 5 animals on St. Croix. Overpopulation was identified to be the most compelling message in the testing phase of this project. But we didn't just put a bunch of posters out and hope for the best. The key to our methodology is ongoing research and optimization. You will need to continue to ask your community if what we are doing is appealing to them. And you can track this by determining how many calls you are getting and how many surgeries are being performed. Do not make the assumption that what appeals to you is going to be the same as what appeals to your audience. I certainly had my preferences, which didn't always pan out. With our most popular messages and advertisements, we confirmed that what was most effective in our target community. Here we see that Overpopulation Kills ad was the most successful for drawing calls, whereas the 300 children are attacked was the least. We placed a unique tracking phone number on each of our messages and each of our media channels. This allowed us to know exactly which advertisements our callers found our contact number and encourages dynamic optimization. We wanted to get rid of what was not resulting in calls and amplify or maintain the strategies that were bringing in calls. Of course, the most important thing is the results. Our case study began with a low-cost option, a price point that was established by the previous spay-neuter program. We began at this level, then ultimately began offering our services for free, then further escalated the offer to our community with a free surgery plus an incentive, and then introduced a mobile van to accommodate a bottleneck in our surgery volume at private vet clinics, and it allowed us to take the surgeries to shelter intake hotspots. By continuing to expand and escalate our offers, we were able to increase the demand for surgeries by 1,000% to a volume high enough to make an impact on population size. By December of 2013, we also saw a decline in shelter intake and a decrease in dogs counted in our animal census. These were promising trends that we felt were the first sign that our program was truly making an impact on the island's animals. This marked a point where we were, in our ideal world, we would continue to increase the momentum of promoting spay and neuter and finally get to a point where there were no more homeless animals on St. Croix. By participating in the SMART program, in part or in full, this is what we hope to do for your community. During the next SMART training module, we will discuss assessing your community. On St. Croix, we focus on all owned dogs as part of our marketing campaigns. What type of animal, if any, do you think needs more attention in your community? Learn more about SMART, FIXIT, and our other programs to help reduce the number of animals euthanized every year at FIXIT-foundation.org and join our conversations at these social media sites.